What's up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in this video we're going to be discussing Orm SEO tactics that I use for some projects. If you're not familiar with Orm, it stands for Online Reputation Management, and it's a special kind of SEO where you're not necessarily trying to rank for a diversity of keywords with blog articles, but you're really just trying to rank properties for a particular brand name. So I've done maybe 5 projects over the years in this field, and right now I have 3 projects that are more prominent client projects for Orm, and 2 of them are proving to be more difficult over a period of time. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you screenshots of some redacted SERP rankings that I have for 2 of the most significant projects. I kind of just talk about my strategy and what I've learned over the last few years that I've done these kinds of projects. We'll be starting with a project that I've had a pretty good amount of success in, but has not been fully achieved yet. And by the way, if you guys do some research on this topic, you'll find that there are agencies and pros out there who do this kind of service for a minimum of $10,000 a month and all kinds of crazy pricing, because a common client for this field is like a celebrity or a pseudo celebrity. It tends to be people who have a vested interest in suppressing poor feedback or poor reviews from the first page rankings for their brand name. Like if they have a lot of search volume on their brand name, then that's kind of the whole point, is to just help the reputation of the individual or the brand. In this case, these 2 main projects that I'm working with are e-commerce related brands, and so I've had a pretty good amount of success with the first project, and with the second project, it's been much, much more difficult. So I'm going to talk about the successes I've had and why I think those things have worked out, and I'm going to talk about the difficulties I've had. These projects I've been working on these for the past year, so it's a long-term project, and most people charge a lot for this service. I charge under $1,000 for each of these projects for this particular customer that I have, that I'm working on these 2 projects for. So, and the customer's aware of that it could be a lot more expensive, because this is difficult. This is the most difficult form of SEO that I've found. But just wanted to throw that disclaimer out there. I'm not getting links for $500 a piece. I'm having to work with links of a specific price bracket and try to figure out how to get as much diversity as I can. So it's been a very challenging project, and let's dive into it. So up here at the top, you'll see the money site. Let me find a place to put my camera here. And I've redacted a variety of sensitive information, like if it was too specific to the niche, or mention the brand in the title, then I redacted a variety of SERPs. So you can see the money site ranks at the top. That's no problem. Brand name, that's always the case. And this particular SERP is for the brand name, which I think I want to say it has like a few thousand searches a month. So it is important for the customer. Then we have typical social media, and it's interesting. In my experience, you would expect Twitter to be up there, but Twitter either drops or altogether de-indexes pretty easily. And that's been my experience with at least these 2 projects, and possibly another project that I have right now. I'd have to double check, but Twitter, it does not perform as well as some of the other social profiles. And the social profiles are the best entities, in my experience so far, to juice for the brand name. And the challenge in this case is the Better Business Bureau. For other projects I've worked with, it can be sometimes Yelp, it can be sometimes Wikipedia, it can be sometimes like Pop Culture Review or some weird angle on a person. In the case of these 2 projects that I'm working with right now for these e-com brands, it's the Better Business Bureau. They're evil. Like, Google shows so much favor to the BBB, it's ridiculous. Like, for how much I put into all this stuff to make it this hard to defeat the BBB, it's crazy. When I first started this a while back, this was, up here at the second or third position or something like that. So that may not seem like a lot, but that's a highly authoritative entity to rank for brands. So it's very difficult. Some of the other negative entities, and this is just the top 30 of the SERPs. And so I record a top 100, and so there's a lot of other ones that are trying to creep up. And there are things like this, Scam Pulse, or just sites that are designed to just be explicitly negative reviews. And so those are the difficulty for these kinds of projects. Social media entities work well. It was a huge victory when we started bumping stuff up above here. These green ones that are redacted, they're mostly guest posts, and they're kind of topical or brand oriented, so I don't want to show those. And so those are mostly guest posts. There might be some other entities there, but they're mostly guest posts. And so you'll notice between these two projects that these guest posts tend to perform better for the actual SERP. But it's not clear if they actually perform better in terms of juicing properties. Excuse me. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. I've grayed out some other entities that are kind of like, who really cares. You can see eBay, Etsy, and some other things. But right now, my goal is, I've tried a variety of angles to push this shopper approved page up, and it's been very challenging. I've done a lot to juice this Mama Bee page. This is a high level guest post that you can easily, actually, I think that this post actually tags it as sponsored content. So it's even cooler that this, and when I say high level, it's not really high level, like a $500 post. I think it's like a $150 post or something like that. But this post is really great in terms of the authority of the site, but it's actually tagged as sponsored content. So it's just kind of funny that this one has actually crept up, and it took a really long time. Like, the typical narrative in SEO is that it can take 6 months to rank, but that's got to be old news. Everything I've seen says a year. It takes like a year to see all the work that you've done really kick in, because you can make really nice posts, and then, like this post, for example, it didn't even show up in the top 100 until maybe a few months ago. And then recently it jumped up to the relatively top 10 range. So pretty huge win, and it sends juice to a number of these other social entities. Excuse me. So that's a great post, a great entity, really cost effective. If you guys are interested in checking that out, that's worthwhile. Just this month, I did a thing for PR.com and AP News for their distribution. I think that was about $300. Actually, no, actually it was. I think it's close to 400 because they charge extra for links. So that's kind of the downside in the content. So I put like 3 links into the content. So, but it ranked really quickly, and the high level PR that's like $300 or so, depending on the service that you use. There's like 4 or 5 major services out there, roughly around the range of $300 to $600. And those tend to perform much better than anything else. But that being said, there's also some lower quality PR you can get for like $70, and there's oftentimes it's just for like one site in the distribution that lasts longer and ranks more powerfully. So there are a number of vehicles. This News Anyway entity, I think this was a part of the PR Fire distribution, which is actually really cheap. I want to say it's like $50 or something. That's just a UK wire. And this is a secondary entity that they pushed to, and this was nowhere to be seen until the last couple months. So you're talking about waiting like almost a whole year just to see this thing shoot up. So when you approach SEO from a long-term standpoint, it's very different, the results you can see. But even so, there are entities like these that can shoot up. And I've got some other things to test, but these are obviously high performing, even though there's certain downsides. Like, just because one wire may have a similar distribution to another wire doesn't mean that it's not worth getting just for one single link. And so that's something that you guys should keep in mind. Like, one link is worth a $300 or a $500 price tag, because all of the other crummier links, like, they seem to do something at tier 2 and maybe tier 3, but they do not perform at tier 1. I have sent so many links to the social properties with the thinking that, okay, they're pillows, they're cushions, they can take the pain and things like that, and it really just results in volatility. And that's a sign that Google is detecting power, but it just doesn't, it's hard to interpret if they create lasting gains. And they certainly rarely will rank in the top 50 or something like that. In this project, there's actually a lot of lower quality guest posts below this in the top 100. Some of these might even be considered lower quality guest posts in this range here. I know that at least 3 of these are higher quality, posts, um, from higher quality entities, but it doesn't really get the job done in terms of what we need. What it's all about is we either need to push these properties above the evil entity, or we need to rank new properties above the evil entity. That's all there is. Like, I've tried a little bit of negative SEO, and it can, not for this project, but for the other project, and then and it has pushed that down a few positions for a period of time, but it's not permanent. And it kind of makes me wonder if the BBB maybe has a negative, link cleaning department or something, and or maybe just the algorithm automatically it makes an adjustment. It's hard to say, but one thing I haven't experimented with is sending negative juice to an entity repeatedly every month. So that might be something to try for the more difficult project that I'll show you guys in a moment here, because the progress there has been much different from this project. This project, I saw this is a 5-month window, and as you can see, some of the better entities had success, before that. And so this one has had some good success, but as you can clearly see, in the last 5 months or so, we have not seen as many new gains or potential new gains. Now, we've seen, when you look at these sectors here, you can see a lot of untagged entities come into the mix. And then here you can see, okay, there's a huge amount of volatility. Anytime you see up and down like this, it's an indication of volatility, which does sort of say that the algorithm is detecting a lot of, link juice, I think, affecting properties. And so we can certainly see in this period of time, in the last, 2 or 3 months, this is December, so I guess that'd be 3 months, there's a huge amount of volatility, huge amount of movement, amount of competition here. You can even see that the BBB came back up above, I think, the Pinterest entity for a couple weeks there. But the Pinterest entity is fighting for position and moving back up, and it's back up at the moment. You can see it over here. You can also see, let's see, what's that? Well, I can't highlight the node, but certain properties have competed with. You can see here there's a large spike from the BBB entity. Here's a spike downward, 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 downward. And that's one of the benefits of this system. I'll show you guys the SERP tracker I'm using at the end of the video, is that it's made for reputation management. So it allows you to see a history of rankings over a period of time, so that you can see, okay, here's a period of time where we lost ground to the evil one. Here's another period of time where we lost ground and then it lunged back up. Here's a period of time where this thing spiked down, this thing spiked down, spiked down, spiked down. So the benefit of those kinds of signals is it allows us to get a glimpse. If we can't see the total response or potential of links we build, until a long period of time has passed, then it helps to see the knee-jerk reaction. Because oftentimes when you build links And these projects, I can't, there's no content to build on these entities. So it's all external content, and it on in the form of backlinks. A lot of people don't seem to think of backlinks as, hey, it's still content. It's just external to the site. So you can completely you can use just backlinks as a ranking strategy. But the issue is that it's very difficult to interpret what's too much or what's too little, and in my experience so far, over the years, it's really more of a, you've got it's better to be careful than it is to be greedy, so it seems to be better to spend bigger chunks of money on bigger entities and much higher quality backlinks than it does to spend less money on a volume of diversified referring domains. I think there's a value to referring domains, but it's not nearly as much as high quality websites that are trusted, that have established rankings. And I have some videos that you guys can check out, um, previously, where I did examples on infrastructure for determining, quality links to acquire, vetting, domains, and looking for numbers of keywords ranking, because that I do believe that is important, to see that a site, no matter what link type it is, to see this site actually has rankings and doesn't have inflated metrics with zero keywords ranking. That's an indication of spam and penalization. So check out any video that I did previously on that, and I think it was on shared tools, so you can check that out. So anyways, with this particular viewable, what we're seeing is the BBB has the potential to drop. And so what I'm working on doing is juicing those entities right at the top there. And the Mama Bee has moved up quite a lot. That's been the most significantly increasing entity in the last 2 or 3 months. Poshmark moved up a full page. This is like a marketplace. And then the shopper approved, I just can't get that to jump up above that fold. It's really irritating. And we can see here that I'm at risk with Pinterest, so I need to send a little bit more juice to Pinterest. It's really easy to work on these assets, and then when you rank, to just forget about them and move on to other entities because you have such limited resources, But this is the kind of thing that'll happen if you don't send a little bit of juice to these properties, every month. You got to do a little bit of something. That can be difficult depending on your budget. So we're fortunate with this property where there's not as many. The really crummy nego review sites have been squished out mostly by either generic rankings or some of those green blog posts that I've done for this property. So this one is in a pretty good place. It's taken a really long time, but it's comparatively in a pretty good place. We have the better SERPs, and we're really close to just getting that BBB just totally suppressed off the first page. Okay, so let's move on to the second project. And as you can see, take a look at the difference. See how the lines are straight over here and up at the top, and then a little bit more chaotic at the bottom, and certain periods of chaos. And that's just an indication of certain types of links I built at that time. Now, look at this one. This one is just extremely volatile. So much higher level of volatility, much higher level of difficulty. And actually, it has a lot more bad entities. You can see that there are several here, one here, here, and then there's a few down below. So there's a lot more entities about how to cancel this service, and it's not a bad service. It's just that it's not as quality as some people, I think, expect. And so there's just a lot of QQing out there about it. And it's a cheap subscription. So this is an e-commerce oriented subscription service also. You can see the the money site has the first position, but then BBB is like right there at position 2. And for the last looks like 10, almost about a week to 10 days, you can see that some of our better entities have lunged up to the top. So it's better than it's been. The difficulty here is defeating all these awful review sites. So even though this one is not as successful as the other project, it's not as, I mean, look how volatile it is. This one is extremely volatile. There's like no stability, except look at the top 2 or 3, a certain amount of stability there. But what's cool is you can see that green dot there and that green dot there, there, and there. You can see certain things lunging to the top. And what's interesting about this one is Twitter was like de-indexed for a while, and then all of a sudden, it lunges to the second position. And I guess for a day displaces the BBB. And I don't think it was Twitter here. It could be the same one. But there's some other ones that have displaced. There's like one or two other ones. I think maybe Trustpilot displaced the BBB at one point. So there is hope. It's just a lot more difficult in this project because we actually have a whole lot more competition. We have to compete with all the ugly reviews. And you can see that some of the social media that typically rank up there, they're not up there right now. So it's really kind of odd. Facebook is oftentimes pretty high up there, Facebook, then Instagram, then Pinterest, and then so on and so forth. In this case, the better entities are the Trustpilot, Shopper Approved, and then the apps. So there's this particular service has an app. And I've put a lot into Trustpilot and Shopper Approved. And you just never know how long it takes certain properties to index and certain properties for the algorithm to make adjustments for those things. And so, we could come back in a couple months, or you never know, and all of a sudden, all 5 of these could lunge up above. It's been a long process. Hasn't happened yet, but that's literally kind of how I've seen it happen. This project next month, I'll be doing a high-level PR of a different kind because I'm trying to test some of the high-level PR properties right now. There was another property I didn't show in this I'm not going to show in this video because it's kind of newer, where I tested high-level PR Newswire variation of syndication, and we got also new Yahoo News, and I was really impressed with how Yahoo News performed. So highly recommend Yahoo News. Anything that does distribution, Yahoo News and PR Newswire, very high performing. For the other project I'm working on, those two entities moved up to the to the second and third position. So those are really powerful PR types. You can see PR Web down here. This is from an older release, but the company Cision, they own PR Web and PR Newswire. And I asked some questions to the support about what's the difference between these two because they're similarly priced. But actually, the distribution in PR Newswire is vastly larger. But you also have to remember that this is a slightly different distribution wire distribution. And so just because you can get more total value from PR Newswire's wire, it doesn't mean that spending the same amount of money, $300-ish, $350 or whatever it is useless on PR Web because PR Web is a whole different link. And so if you're working on a project, I'd recommend, do PR Newswire push first and then go and do maybe do PR Web another time just to get that link. But as you can see, and this has been my observation for other projects, PR Web doesn't push up as strongly as some of the other high-level PR. I'm sure it varies between projects, but anyways, so there's some other weird entities like little directory stuff and things that seem to have potential to rank also, like Zoom Info, Topio Networks. There's also Manta, and I'll show you guys a list of that in just a moment here. Open corporates also seems to rank for a variety of businesses if they have a legitimate LLC, for example. Excuse me. So anyways, with this project, you can see there was a lunge downward here. I think what happened was schema data started ranking for those positions. I try to like filter it out so that it doesn't cause confusion, but I think that's maybe what happened. It could be that some other entity shot up and we're just not properly seeing it, but I think that was schema data and the database updated. But you can see a huge movements all throughout, and then look at just the last like 2 months or 2 or 3. Well, I guess this is the last month, actually, month and a week. And just look at the volatility. It's just like up, down, up, down, up. That's just crazy volatility. And that's just because, like in the last month or two, I had some these were tier one actually. I had some tier one forum links built manually at a pretty good amount between some projects. And so when you build links, you will see adjustments. It happens uh, every time. So it's interesting to see that because it kind of tells you what may have power and what may have influence. And you can see that in the last couple in this 1 week here, there was 2 instances of displacement. So, like I said, I'll repeat it again. Even though you can't see the long-term benefits, you can see the knee-jerk reactions. And so that's a really good indicator of, okay, hey, this vehicle may be a little bit more effective than I thought it was. Maybe I should run this again or find someone who does something similar but with a different referring set of referring domains. So let's talk about the vehicles now. These are the best performing properties. I looked across a variety of projects, and these are the best performing properties I've observed. In some projects, that I would also mention LinkedIn. LinkedIn, depending on if it's like a person, LinkedIn can perform really well for a person. So I'd probably add that to the list. But for my recent projects, that I looked at the top 100 SERPs and I made lists of things that seem to be the best performing entities across all 3 projects. So we've got Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Trustpilot, and this is really kind of in order. So that's something to keep in mind. Shopper approved, guest posts, PR Newswire, Yahoo News, AP News, PR.com. And so these were just in the last month where I was able to discover that those were, really powerful for this kind of thing. Excuse me. I've been skeptical about using some of those things because for these projects, because I just wasn't sure, if I was going to drop a pretty penny and not see any kind of result. It's a really kind of a long story, a lot of thinking involved in that, but obviously they jumped right up to the top. So I don't really have anything special to add about these properties. Facebook and Pinterest seem to perform the best out of social properties. Um, let's see. Not everybody's going to want to do Shopper Approved or Trustpilot. If you do a guest post, now by far, the largest quantity of great entities that ranks in general, just in the top 100, are guest posts. So my recommendation is to find a topical vendor and that is going to allow you to put the brand name as the first, or the person's name as the first thing in the title, allow you to do video embed, allow you to do GMB embed if that's applicable, images, just that really lets you go the distance. And if it's expensive, so be it. It doesn't matter. It's better to spend your money on 1 or 2 really high quality guest posts rather than a volume of links, you know. And if you're wondering where I get links, at all kinds of marketplaces and all kinds of vendors. It doesn't matter where you get the links. What matters is you vetting the links. So you have to know what to look for in the links. There's all kinds of videos out there about, various marketplaces and how stupid it is to buy links from them. Like, yeah, if you don't vet your links, it's really stupid of you. But if you vet your links and you determine, okay, what are the metrics? How many referring domains? What's the ratio? If there's 1,000 to 1 links, you got one referring domain and 1,000 links from that domain, it's not really a good sign. It looks like programmatic content. If you got no rankings, numbers of keywords ranking on a domain, it's a spam indicator. So you have to know what to look for. It's not about just general marketplace or, you know, most vendors that you talk to from Pakistan or India, they're going to have crummy links. But if they give you a list, vet it, use something like DOM Detailer to vet it at a glance, and then take the ideal entities and go into something like SE Ranking or Moz Open Site Explorer or Ahrefs and look at the number of keywords ranking, because you can get good links from really any vendor. So guest posts are really great. They will rank, but of course the challenge is how do it's difficult to get one to rank amidst the social profiles for a brand or those kinds of entities. And so actually you could technically do this for a competitor if you really wanted to, but it's difficult. It's very expensive. I would not recommend that necessarily. So okay, lesser performing entities, Twitter. Even though you would expect Twitter to perform well, and I'm sure it does in some cases, in my experience with all the projects I've done, Twitter doesn't seem to maintain its position very well. So I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. YouTube channels don't maintain position very well. Then there's this PR that I think you can get this from PR Fire. This one has impressed me recently. There's PR Web. Um, there's Manta. So directories can get you some value because they can rank for the entity, especially because they include an NAP citation. So if your project contains an NAP citation, I do think there's benefits to that. Obviously, I didn't put the GMB here. The GMB will rank as a snippet, so there's clearly benefit to that. Zoom Info, Open Corporates, anything kind of like that. Topio Networks is similar. Business Yav and Bizapedia are kind of similar to that, but this Bizapedia is really expensive. It's like $300 or $200 or $300 for a listing. So I would be very careful about doing that. This one did not rank high. I didn't do that, but I saw it for something else I was looking at, and I thought, hey, that's kind of neat. Benzinga. This is interesting because when I do searches for my brand names, pardon me. When I do searches for the brand names on these projects in Yahoo, Bing, and DuckDuckGo, Benzinga ranks higher on average than any other entity. So it's kind of wild. And I'm trying to think, where did this come from? I think this may have come from 1888 press release. I think that's about a $150 press release. That site itself doesn't rank too well, but Benzinga is in the top X number of rankings. So I could be mistaken on the wire that I used to get that, but it's an interesting one. There's also Open PR, which is really cheap PR credits, and I don't think that I saw that in Google. I think I may have saw it in another thing, and it kind of made me think, well, this isn't useless, possibly, but I think Google might view it as spam. So, but I wanted to mention it because it's really cheap PR distribution. WebWire is a fantastic PR service, really cost effective. They have distribution for PR Newswire, and they have a number of other specialty syndication wires. So make sure to check them out because they have some really good stuff. I even did a PR one time for a client. Cost like $450 or $500, and I think it was $500 with the content. But we were able to get distribution to the editorial desk of Wall Street Journal and some really high level stuff. That's a different kind of wire, though. You want to make sure to look for guaranteed web syndication. Unless your angle is really, really good, don't risk purely editorial wires, because obviously it takes a lot more work to get the PR done, and there's risks. So make sure you do guaranteed web syndication, and you'll have a good time. And they actually have a wire page where they publish PR, And it's really cool because they publish impressions and clicks, so you can actually get great data from this particular wire that gives you insights on the performance of the release. So alternate exact match domains are another thing. There's one project for one of my clients where they started getting a bunch of alternate exact match domains, and I'm surprised to see that there's like two of them that are in the running. They're not in the top, 20 or something like that, but they're in the running. They're starting to grow, and so that's a possibility. Some directories. There's a bunch of other directories you can do also. So the most powerful evils would be Wikipedia, and actually any wiki. I saw anything that's like that says wiki in it. I've seen rank high for brand names, um, for basically negative stuff. And I would even argue that Wikipedia is a greater enemy than BBB for some brands and some, like celebrity entities. Uh, Really hard to displace. It's given way too much favor in the SERPs, and obviously the information is like dominated by higher academia individuals. Like there's no moderation on Wikipedia. I tried to get something changed on Wikipedia once, and basically I got banned. And then when I tried to do like a mod request, the the person who reported me like was knew the mod or something like that, and they wouldn't even let me report it. It just, I've never seen a more corrupt community than Wikipedia, and that's a fact. Um, so really tough one. BBB, obviously, as you see, it's all from my examples. Right now, this is my greatest foe. Yelp. Yelp is ridiculous. Like I had one reputation management project where they had one bad review that was just like being pushed above everything else, and they even had other good reviews. So I put a lot of effort in, and figured out how to get like a dozen other reviews in there. And when you look at the page, it nestles them under an area reviews that aren't really so important or whatever. And so they just like intentionally like nestle it under a click so that the customer can't see that there's like a dozen other good reviews, and there's just this one bad review. It's really weird. So I just wouldn't even don't even touch Yelp. Don't engage with it. Just rank stuff above it. And then any negative review site or scam watch site. And as you could see from that one project, there's a lot of them out there. Those are really more powerful on average than most guest posts, and they have the potential to rival other social properties. So they can be pretty dangerous. Um, um, but that's really kind of all I have to say about that. Like you're going to have to use other entities to rank above them anyways. Other companies with similar names can be a problem. Um, Not much to say about that. Pop culture blog posts and articles. I had one client that I tried to do a little bit of stuff for 1 month that they hired me for, and they were a minor celebrity. And they had this weird post ranking where somebody kind of phrased, it wasn't actually a bad article, but the way that they phrased the title of the blog post was really kind of weird and it almost sort of seemed a little racist. So it was a little bit odd, and they had another business and didn't want that to show up when people looked for their business. And so I kind of tried to do a little bit, but it it really didn't, I didn't get enough time to work on it, obviously. And it's still there. I checked it recently just out of curiosity, because this person only hired me for like a month, but I checked it recently, and I was surprised to see it was still at position 2. So this stuff does matter to some people. Um, Now let's talk about links. So in terms of links, like I said, the best stuff you can get, high quality, tier 1 assets. It's really guest posts. guest posts on high quality websites with traffic. Obviously, you want to have social properties. They're the easiest to rank for a brand name. They're given a lot of favor. And that would be number one, really. Number two would be, in terms of actually building links and content, high quality external guest posts. You should expect a high quality post is going to cost you between $100 and $500. So anywhere in that range, I know that's a lot of money, but it's way more worthwhile than spinning your wheels with other link building vehicles. Now, once you get those things going, the best link types after that would be PBNs and niche edits or link drops. Link drops are basically, they're pretty much the same as link edits or niche edits. The problem with niche edits is that, and let's talk about PBNs. So when it comes to PBNs, you do want to ask the vendor how many referring domains do you have in your network? And you do want to ask them to send you samples. If you talk to a vendor who will not send you samples, do not work with that guy. And make it clear to him, make it clear to him this is not industry standard. Because there are tons of people who understand that samples are required, and they're required because you have to check the metrics. Roll the metrics through a utility like Moz, DOM Detailer, Moz, SE Ranking, Ahrefs, etc., SEMrush. I've tested all of them. You can look at my video on shared tools in the past, and you'll see exactly my detailed process on that. And you want to look for things that have numbers of keywords ranking. That's the biggest thing. And your referring domain ratio needs to be smaller. 1-to-1 is as good as it gets, but 1-to-5 is okay too. So 1-to-1 and 1-to-5 range-ish. There will be a bigger range if it's a really big site with a ton of links and a lot of keyword rankings. But use discernment. If it looks like a legit site and it has legitimate numbers of keywords ranking, any number of keywords ranking is a good sign, because it means that Google actually views them as having the potential to rank. But be mindful what you're spending. If you don't want to spend $15 per link on crappy links, you don't even want to spend $9 per link on crappy links. You know what I'm saying? Like, you shouldn't be spending more than $5 per link on, lower quality links. PBN links don't really do that well at tier 1. Now, I could be wrong about some of the things that I've built and some of my properties, because over a long period of time, it's hard to see that. And so, something to keep in mind, but in my experience, when I send those to tier 2, say I juice a guest post, or I juice some other post type that I've done that's already pointed at the social properties, then I see knee-jerk reactions. I see movements. So those seem to work well, like for boosting the page authority of a higher quality asset. You can try them at your social properties, but in my experience, you might be wasting your money. Now, I've tried 2 or 3 months of higher quality forum links and placements, and you'd be surprised. The metrics on those links are higher than most PBNs. So those are not to be scoffed at. I've also done, let me think, what is it called? Infographic embedded links. And there's some vendors who create things that are of surprisingly high quality for infographics, and also provide distribution in certain places for those types of things. So those can be really fantastic also, because they're image embedded links. It's hard to interpret, how impactful they are by comparison. So if you find someone who can do a unique link type, try it out, because you want a diversity of link types in any given link profile. But obviously be prudent with your budget. Don't send anything to tier 1 that you think is maybe kind of crummy. Pardon me. It also helps to put your money page in your tier 1 assets, to put your money page link in there alongside 1 or 2 or 3, however many they let you do, your social properties, because then it's reciprocal relevance. They should already know that, but in my experience, like when you put the money page in there, it actually seems to do better. So there's that. Don't use the same anchor text. It's beneficial to use the same like brand name anchor text. Obviously that's a, you're telling them this is what this link is about, but you don't want to overdo the brand name just by itself. So you want to do things like brand name review, brand name thoughts, uh, you know, brand name ideas, ideas for this brand. You need to variate your anchor text, because if it's the same thing over and over, you can spam it out, and that's why it's also important to use the raw URL. So diversify your anchor text. Don't go crazy with just doing the raw brand name, because it's maybe do that for tier one assets, but everything else needs to be like a mixture of things: raw, variated, title related to the title of the article you're sending juice to, and so on and so forth. That actually takes the most time of everything, is sitting there variating the anchor text. Um, Let me think. For so and finally, for niche edits or link drops, like, be careful with that too. Like, if you buy from vendors, you're going to have a markup. It's basically like PBN networks oftentimes, where they've done a link drop. That's what they look like, and they're expensive. They're way too expensive compared to the rest of the market. You're looking at like $80 or more per link drop or niche edit or whatever, and then you also have to share the real estate with several other links. So you can try that, but in my experience, it's messy. And I've had some issues where somebody made a mistake and didn't put out a link, and it's like, hey, that's $80. I shouldn't have to be monitoring these links this closely. So that's another benefit of using other types, is you don't necessarily have to obsess over every little link. Um, Obviously, the more reliable professional entities seem to be fine. They have their stuff together. But when you order stuff from independent marketers and they're higher priced, just be aware that you're risking your money. Like, in something that should be so simple, people do really stupid stuff. Like, I've ordered from vendors who don't use the proper anchors, and they put like a raw URL next to the anchor, and I had to like go and catch that and make complaints, and just really dumb stuff. So keep that in mind also. um, you might do that every once in a while, but in my experience, niche edits they don't give you as much of a bang for your buck as guest posts. So really, the better way to handle guest posts, just go do a search for editorial content, editorial posts, media kit. Guest posts sometimes, but media kit. A lot of the big sites label it under media kit, and when you click on media kit, it'll go into talking about editorial content, and that's the kind of thing you want to look for. Make sure to ask them: are the links do follow? Are is it tagged with sponsored content? How many links can I put in in the content? Can I put images? Can I put videos? Can I put an embedded GMB, and whatever you need to do? You have to ask that stuff, because otherwise they're not gonna. The people who do it are not gonna tell you that they tag it as sponsored content, and it can be a drag when you find out after the fact. So those are all my tips. High quality tier one guest posts. You can do some higher quality PBN links to those guest posts, and also to niche edits. You can send niche edits to tier one, I feel. But yeah, you probably want to reserve PBN links, unless they're really high quality PBNs. You're paying $50 or $100 per link or something. Then they really need to stay at tier two, tier three, etc. So that's pretty much it, guys. I appreciate you watching. I hope you learned something. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And before I go, let me show you this SERP tracker that I use. I was hoping they had an affiliate program, but they don't, so it's kind of a bummer. But it is SERPWoo, and you can see they specifically advertise for ORM. I did this research a couple years back, because I have like a couple different SERP trackers from some other things. And I needed to find something that allowed ORM to operate with color tagging and being able to properly look at a single SERP and to be able to see historical rankings. There might be other things that can do it that don't advertise it properly. I found one other tool that sort of advertised it, but the features just, I did a trial and the features didn't pan out. So there's a lot of SERP trackers out there, and a lot of them are really overpriced. This is the one I've been using for more than a couple years, and as you can see from the pictures, it seems to work pretty well. It shows you where things went up and where things went down at certain windows so that you can understand where you need to send juice for your next, push or whatever. And there's a lot of other features that you can't see from this screenshot, but you can look down 100 SERPs deep. You can look at very specific, this is like a very specific filtered time frame. So you can just look at a week, you can look at a month. And it also has white label features at one of the higher plans. And so I use that for clients. And it offers a nice, pleasant interface to see, for them to click on keywords and to see this kind of display, and to even see a SERP list viewable. So it's an independent marketer platform, but it's excuse me, it's stable. There's been some glitches here and there that I've found, and I've reported them, and the team has fixed them very quickly, usually within the day that I report them, and they're very responsive. And so yeah, I don't know how it compares to a lot of other fancy SERP tracking utilities, but it does what I need it to do for the purposes of link building, So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.